In the endless black of deep space, a fleet of alien warships moved like predators across the silent void. Their hulls glowed with cold blue lights. Their weapons were armed and ready. They were proud hunters of the stars, and no enemy had ever escaped them. Worlds had burned before their fire, and countless races had fallen to their power. The aliens believed no one could challenge them. No one could even dream of standing against them. That belief was about to be tested on their scanners. A small signal appeared. At first it seemed like nothing, just a weak dot lost in the darkness, but soon the signal became clear. It was a human ship, a tiny vessel alone in the middle of nowhere compared to the mighty alien fleet. It was nothing more than a drifting toy. The aliens stared at their screens, and then the mocking began. One voice laughed. Is this all the humans send against us? A single fragile ship? Do they think we will fear this? Another voice followed with scorn. Perhaps it is broken. Perhaps the pilot is already dead. A coffin flying through the stars. The bridge of the alien flagship filled with cruel laughter. Their commander leaned forward, his eyes cold with arrogance. He too smiled. It is a lonely prey. Let us watch before we crush it. The fleet adjusted its course. Hundreds of warships turned toward the single human vessel. Engines roared, weapons pulsed with energy, all sensors focused on the tiny target. The aliens expected fear. They expected the human to run or to beg for mercy, but inside that small ship there was no movement of retreat, no desperate signal for help. Instead, the human vessel drifted calmly, as if it had chosen to be there. The aliens zoomed their vision screens closer. The cameras caught a glimpse through the cockpit glass. A single human sat in the pilot's seat. His face was clear, calm, unshaken, no fear in his eyes, only silence. The aliens felt a strange pause. Why did the human not move? Why was he not trembling? Why did he look so steady? Some aliens laughed again, trying to hide their unease. Perhaps he is frozen. Perhaps fear has broken his mind. Another whispered. Or maybe it is a trap. The commander shook his head. A trap? Impossible. This is only a weak human craft, nothing to fear. Yet even as he spoke, a shadow of doubt crept into the hearts of his crew. Something about the human stillness was wrong. Space was never forgiving. A lone ship never survived this far from its fleet, and yet here it was waiting like a stone in the river, unmoved by the current. The alien fleet circled closer, engines hummed, and weapons locked on, but the human did not flinch. His hands rested on the controls, his eyes fixed forward, as though he was staring directly into the alien commander's soul. The silence of the human ship began to feel heavy. It pressed on the minds of the aliens like an invisible weight. Their laughter grew weaker, their jokes faded into whispers. Even the sound of their own machines seemed louder than before. The commander ordered a scan of the human vessel. The results flashed on screen. Weak shields, low power, outdated weapons, nothing to fear. The aliens laughed once more. It is truly nothing, a piece of space junk. But still the human remained silent. Still his face showed no fear. The commander narrowed his eyes. Then let us play with it before we end it. He ordered one of his ships to fire a warning shot. A beam of light cut through space, scorching past the human ship close enough to burn its side. The explosion echoed across the void, yet the human did not move. He did not send a message. He did not even turn his ship away. He simply sat there calm. As ever the alien crew grew restless. Some felt anger, others confusion. The silence of the human was louder than their weapons. It was as if he was waiting for them, as if he knew something they did not. The commander leaned back in his seat, suddenly unsure. The human was alone, small and weak. But why then did fear begin to creep into the alien hearts? Why did the emptiness of space suddenly feel like it was watching them? Why did the human silence feel like a hidden storm waiting to break? No one spoke now. The fleet hovered in formation, their weapons pointed, their laughter gone, and still the human sat alone in the cockpit, his eyes cold and steady like a man who carried a secret that could change everything. The alien fleet waited in the cold silence of space, their weapons glowing with deadly energy, yet the small human ship did not move. It drifted steady like a ghost, unbothered by the massive army surrounding it. The alien commander frowned, his confidence shaken. For a brief moment he had expected panic, or at least a desperate message of surrender, but there was nothing, only quiet. The communication officer tried again, sending signals in every known frequency. Their voices reached out across the void, demanding a reply, ordering the human to identify himself, mocking him, daring him to answer. But the human remained silent. The screen showed his calm figure sitting in the cockpit, his hands resting lightly on the controls, his face emotionless, his eyes sharp and focused. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. One of them muttered that the human must be frozen with fear. Another laughed nervously, saying he was too proud to beg. But the longer they stared, the less their own words convinced them. Silence from prey was not natural. Silence in battle was not normal. Silence meant something more. The commander slammed his hand on the console, breaking the unease. He is one man alone, nothing more. He cannot harm us. His words were firm, but even he could feel a thin edge of doubt crawling into his chest. The alien fleet had fought humans before. They were stubborn, yes, but fragile compared to alien might. A lone ship should have been a gift, an easy kill, yet the human stillness felt wrong, like a predator waiting in the dark instead of prey hiding in fear. The commander ordered another scan of the vessel. The results were the same: weak shields, low energy, old design, no visible weapons, nothing to explain the human's courage, nothing to justify his calm. And yet the calm remained. The crew began whispering among themselves stories of human soldiers from past wars, tales of men and women who fought long after their fleets had fallen, who fought with rage and cunning until their last breath. Many aliens had laughed at those stories, calling them myths, calling them propaganda. But staring now at this one silent man, those stories no longer felt like lies, they felt like warnings. The communication officer looked to the commander with hesitation. "Should we attack now, sir?" The commander hesitated. His pride told him yes, but his instincts whispered no. To hesitate before prey was shameful, but to fall into a trap was worse. He glared at the human ship again, searching for weakness. The human did not blink, did not move. It was like staring into stone. Some of the younger aliens on the bridge began to sweat, their claws tapping nervously against metal consoles. One whispered, "Why does he not speak? Why does he not move?" Another answered with a shaky laugh, "Because he is already dead." But the words rang hollow, because on the screen the human's eyes still burned with life. The silence stretched on, every second heavier than the last. The alien fleet now seemed restless, their great numbers useless against one tiny ship. They could destroy him with one command, but something in their hearts held them back like a chain. The commander grew angry at his own hesitation. "Enough, we will crush him." He raised his hand to give the final order, but at that exact moment, the lights on the human ship flickered, not bright, not loud, just a faint pulse that rippled across the darkness. Sensors screamed, detecting a strange signal, an unknown frequency spreading from the human craft. Alien engineers rushed to study it, their screens filled with codes and readings they had never seen before. Panic spread across the technical crew. "This cannot be," one shouted. "The signal is rewriting our scans. It is hiding something, it is." His words broke off as systems across the nearest alien ship flickered for a moment, then returned, but weaker. The crew gasped. The commander roared for answers, but none came. The human ship pulsed again, another faint wave, invisible to the eye but powerful to machines. More systems faltered across the alien fleet. The commander's voice grew sharp. "Shut it down, jam the signal." They tried, but the frequency slipped past every defense like water through broken hands. The human still did not speak, still did not move. Only his silence, and the pulse of his ship spoke for him. The aliens now understood. The silence was not weakness, it was patience, it was control. The human was not frozen, he was waiting. The commander gritted his teeth, feeling anger and fear battle inside him. He shouted for the fleet to prepare weapons, to fire at once, to end this before it grew worse. But deep down he knew it was already too late, because for the first time in his long career, he felt like prey staring into the eyes of a hunter, hidden in the skin of a man. The silence of the human ship was not empty, it was full of promise, a promise of something the aliens had never faced before, and something they were about to learn in the most painful way possible. The alien commander's patience finally snapped. The silence of the human ship had stretched too long, and his own crew looked at him with unease. If he delayed any longer, their fear would grow into doubt, and doubt was poison for discipline. So with a sharp gesture he gave the order, "Fire a warning shot, let this human see what awaits him." At once one of the alien warships powered its main cannon. A beam of burning light shot through the void, cutting across the blackness. It screamed past the tiny human ship, close enough to scorch its hull and shake its frame. The explosion lit the darkness for miles, but the human did not flinch. He did not turn his ship away, he did not even raise his shields. He simply sat there, still silent, his eyes calm on the screen. The alien crew exchanged nervous glances. One whispered, "Why does he not react?" Another hissed, "Even prey moves when fire burns near." But still the human did nothing. The commander growled, furious, "Then let us strike harder, fire again." This time the blast hit closer, almost grazing the human craft. A ripple of energy spread across its hull, but instead of breaking apart, the ship absorbed it. The light vanished into its frame like water disappearing into sand. The sensors flashed with impossible readings. The energy had been swallowed instead of resisted. The aliens froze in disbelief. The commander barked, "Explain this now." But his engineers shook their heads. No system they knew, no shield they had ever seen could drink fire like that. The human ship pulsed again, faint waves rolling out across the fleet, invisible to the eye but heavy on their machines. Alarms screamed on half a dozen ships, weapons glitched, sensors went dark, engines coughed to silence, only for a moment, but long enough to stir fear through the armada. The commander shouted to stabilize systems, to focus weapons, to stay strong, but in the back of his mind the truth dug deeper. This was no ordinary ship, this was not the broken, fragile vessel. It had appeared to be the Human had hidden something powerful behind its silence. Finally the human moved, his lips parted, and his voice carried across the comm system clear and steady, simple words that echoed like thunder. You should not have provoked me. The bridge of the alien flagship fell into silence, every eye staring at the screen. The sound of that human voice felt heavier than 100 cannons. It was not loud, but it carried weight, a promise of something terrible. The aliens broke into shouts. Some demanded immediate attack, others warned it was a trap. The commander clenched his fists. He would not be mocked by a single human, yet his chest grew tight with unease. He shouted, "All ships prepare to fire, destroy him now." But even as he gave the order his fleet hesitated. The human's voice repeated again, calm and cold, "You will not survive." Then his ship stirred for the first time, engines glowing with a deep red light, a strange glow not like any ordinary thruster. It spread across the hull like veins. Awakening after centuries, sensors tried to read the surge, but numbers twisted into chaos. Too much energy, too strange to classify. The human ship looked alive. The commander roared, "Fire, all weapons, fire now." Beams of light, missiles, plasma cannons, everything the fleet had unleashed at once. A storm of fire brighter than suns filled the void, swallowing the tiny human vessel in a burning wave. Explosions echoed across the darkness, filling space with deathly light. For a moment relief crossed alien faces. Surely nothing could survive such fury. Surely the human was gone. But as the fire cleared, their screens revealed the shape still standing, the human ship unharmed, surrounded by a faint shimmer like a storm made of glass. It had endured the impossible. Silence returned, thicker than before. Aliens froze, their claws shaking, their voices caught in their throats. Then slowly lights rippled again across the human vessel, patterns of energy glowing like ancient symbols. Each pulse made the alien machines flicker weaker and weaker until weapons refused to charge and engines stuttered into silence. The commander felt cold sweat as realization struck. This was no lonely wanderer, no broken prey. This was bait, a trap wrapped in the skin of weakness. The human silence had been waiting for this moment. The first move had been made, and it was not the alien fleet that struck. It was the human who now held the field. His voice came again, low, sharp, cutting into their fear. "Now it begins." The alien fleet stood frozen as the human's words echoed through the void. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any explosion. The commander felt his throat tighten. This was not prey, this was something else, something he could not yet understand. His crew scrambled at their stations trying to restore failing systems, but the strange pulses from the human ship crawled deeper into their machines, corrupting code, shutting down circuits, bending energy to its will. The commander demanded reports. His engineers shouted over one another. Sensors were blind, weapons were offline, communication scrambled, as if the very heart of their fleet was being strangled by invisible hands. Still the human sat in his cockpit, calm, cold, his face lit by the eerie glow of his ship. Then one of the alien officers gasped as the data cleared for a moment, revealing an impossible truth. The human ship was not old, it was not weak, it was ancient and alive, technology beyond anything the aliens had ever seen. Hidden under a disguise of fragility, the commander snarled, refusing to believe. "It is trickery, no machine can do this." But his own eyes betrayed him as the human ship shifted its form, panels sliding open, energy veins glowing brighter with each pulse, like a beast stretching after long sleep. What they had thought was a frail craft was a weapon from forgotten ages. The crew whispered in terror, some recalling forbidden legends about human experiments long abandoned, about ships built with living cores, about weapons so powerful they were locked away forever. None had ever been seen until now. The commander tried to regain control. "It matters not, one ship cannot face us all, fire again with everything." But his words were empty because the fleet could not obey. Their weapons remained silent, their controls dead. The human ship pulsed once more, and this time the pulse carried images across the alien screens, a vision forced into their minds. They saw burning worlds, not alien worlds but their own. Cities reduced to ash, their fleets torn apart by storms of fire, their people screaming as darkness fell. It was not a threat, it was a promise, a glimpse of what the human ship could unleash. The aliens shouted in panic, some tore their headsets away, others begged their commander to retreat, but pride chained him to his chair. His voice cracked with anger. "We do not fear humans." Yet his hands trembled. The human finally moved his hand, rising to a console. His eyes narrowed, his voice soft but sharp. "You mocked humanity, now you will understand it." The alien bridge filled with alarms as their ships began to collapse one by one, engines overheating, weapons melting from within, entire systems breaking without a single shot fired. The commander watched helpless as 3 of his warships drifted powerless, their lights dying, their crews screaming through broken channels. This was not battle, it was execution. The human had not come to fight, he had come to end them. The truth struck the commander like ice in His chest, the lonely ship had never been alone. It carried the weight of something greater, a weapon built by human hands, perhaps from lost technology, perhaps from a secret humanity had hidden from the stars. Whatever it was, it had chosen this moment to reveal itself. The commander's crew stared at him waiting for orders, but no command came. His pride shattered, his arrogance broken. He realized too late the human silence had been the deadliest weapon of all. It had given them time to underestimate it, time to laugh, time to believe victory was theirs. And now, as the revelation unfolded before their eyes, he knew extinction was not a possibility, it was a certainty. The human ship pulsed again, brighter, sharper, the glow spreading across space like dawn rising over a battlefield. The voice of the human came one last time before the storm: "Never mistake silence for weakness." And with those words the real horror began. The human's final words hung in the silence of space, and before the alien fleet could recover, the counterattack began. The human ship released a sudden surge of energy, a pulse so violent that every alien screen lit up. Red alarms screamed across 100 bridges as their systems collapsed, engines shut down, weapons melted, and shields flickered into useless shadows. The aliens shouted orders, tried to fight, tried to stabilize, but the storm was too fast, too strong. The pulse rippled outward like a tidal wave, swallowing ships whole. One vessel after another erupted in flames, their hulls breaking apart, as if torn by invisible hands. The commander of the fleet screamed for his captains to regroup, but his voice was drowned by static. His communication lines, already broken, his command shattered. The human ship moved, then not with the slow drift of before, but with terrifying speed. Its thrusters glowed red and gold as it darted through the chaos, weaving between explosions like a predator among prey. Every time it passed near a warship, that ship cracked apart, its core imploding in a brilliant flash. The aliens fired in desperation, small cannons, weak missiles, anything that could still function, but nothing touched the human vessel. Every shot bent away, as if space itself curved to protect it. The crew of the flagship watched in horror, their confidence now ashes, their arrogance burned away in the fire of their own deaths. One officer cried out that this was no human weapon but a god awakened from slumber. Another whispered that it was vengeance made flesh. Whatever it was, it killed without mercy. The commander refused to believe, he refused to surrender, screaming at his gunners to fire again, but when they tried, their consoles exploded in sparks, their weapons turning against them. The human ship pulsed once more, and 3 capital ships tore apart, their pieces spinning into the void, the screams of their crews echoing before silence claimed them. All the bridge of the flagship shook as shockwaves passed through it. The crew clung to their stations, faces pale, their eyes locked on the screen where the tiny human craft danced through their mighty fleet like a wolf tearing through a herd. The commander's heart pounded, his pride shattered. He could no longer lie to himself. This was not a battle, this was slaughter. He had mocked the human, thought him fragile, thought him weak, and now he watched his fleet burn because of that arrogance. The human pilot sat calm, his hands steady, his eyes unshaken, as though this destruction was nothing new to him. His face reflected not joy, not anger, but cold certainty. This was simply duty. The aliens begged their commander to retreat, but he knew retreat was meaningless. No one would escape the storm. Already ships that had turned to flee were ripped apart, their engines detonating before they crossed a single league. The human vessel glowed brighter with each kill, the patterns on its hull alive with terrible light. It was feeding on the battle, feeding on the destruction, growing stronger as the aliens grew weaker. The commander collapsed into his chair, his mind numb, his eyes hollow. He whispered in disbelief, "One man, one ship." His voice cracked as the reality crushed him. "He is ending us all." The human spoke again across the comm system, his tone still calm as though nothing around him mattered. "You brought this on yourselves. You thought humanity was broken. You thought silence was fear. Now you will learn what silence hides." The words cut through the bridge sharper than any blade. The crew fell into despair. Some dropped their weapons, others wept, knowing they would never see home again. Outside their windows the fleet continued to collapse, thousands of alien lives ending in fire and silence. The counterattack was no longer an attack, it was extermination. Within minutes what had once been the pride of an empire was reduced to burning wreckage, floating helpless in the dark. The commander's vision blurred, his world falling apart around him as the human ship drifted before him, still glowing, still alive, untouched by the storm. He realized then the truth had never been hidden. The silence of the human had been the loudest warning of all, but they had refused to listen, and now nothing remained but death. The void of space was filled with fire and wreckage. The alien fleet that once stretched like a wall of steel across the stars was now broken, scattered into pieces that drifted lifelessly in the dark. But the destruction was not yet complete. The human ship pulsed again, its glow brighter than before, the patterns across its hull burning like molten veins. Each pulse sent another wave of energy across the battlefield, and every wave claimed more alien lives. Engines burst apart, shields collapsed. Reactors imploded until whole warships folded in on themselves with screams that never reached the void. The commander of the alien fleet sat frozen in his chair, his eyes wide, his chest tight, as he watched his empire die before him. He had believed in strength, he had believed in numbers, but none of it mattered now against the storm unleashed by one man and one ship. He had mocked the human, called him prey, called him weak, and now he watched the price of arrogance. His officers shouted in fear, begging him for orders, but he had none. Their weapons no longer obeyed, their machines no longer worked, their fleets no longer fought. It was not war anymore, it was extermination. The human ship moved slowly, now drifting between the wrecks as if surveying its work. It did not need speed, its enemies were already broken. Every alien who looked upon it felt only dread. They whispered in despair, wondering if the man inside was human at all, or something far greater, something ancient, wearing the skin of a man. The commander's heart pounded as he realized retreat was impossible. Even those who had fled were gone. The pulses had reached them too. Their wrecks floated far away, proof that escape was a lie. His empire's might destroyed in a single encounter. The silence that had once been a joke now became the sound of death. The human's voice returned over comms, steady, cold, without emotion. This ends now. Then the ship unleashed its final weapon. The glow on its hull grew until it was blinding. A sphere of light expanded from its core, spreading outward in all directions. Not fire, not missiles, not plasma, but a storm of pure energy. Space itself bent around it. Ships caught in its reach, twisted like paper, and then shattered into dust. Whole crews vanished without a trace. No explosion, no scream, only silence. The wave expanded, swallowing the last of the fleet. The commander's eyes filled with horror as his flagship began to break, its hull groaning, its lights dying, his crew crying out in terror. He gripped his chair, his pride gone, his empire gone, only despair remained. He thought of all the races they had conquered, all the mocking laughter they had given to weaker worlds, and now they were the ones mocked by fate, destroyed not by an army, not by a fleet, but by one silent man. The storm consumed them all one by one, every vessel, every soldier, every voice, until there was nothing left but wreckage floating quietly in the endless black. When the wave faded, only the human ship remained, untouched, glowing faintly as though satisfied with its work. The battlefield that had once been alive with alien arrogance was now a graveyard of silence. The commander's flagship cracked open, light pouring from its wounds as systems failed, alarms screamed uselessly. His officers clung to walls, their voices high with fear, but he no longer spoke. He knew the end had come. He stared at the human on the screen, that calm, steady face, and whispered broken words, "Who are you?" But no answer came, only the glow of the ship, growing brighter. Then the final shockwave ripped through his vessel, splitting it apart. The commander closed his eyes as fire consumed him, and his empire died with him. Silence returned to the void. No screams, no weapons, no voices, only the lonely drift of metal fragments. And among the ruins the human ship turned, its engines humming softly. It had ended an empire in minutes, left no survivors, left no hope. Then it vanished into hyperspace, disappearing like a shadow, leaving behind nothing but the memory of extinction. The battlefield was silent once more. The wreckage of the alien fleet floated in the endless dark, broken ships turning slowly as cold stars watched from afar. No cries, no signals, no survivors, only the remains of an empire erased in minutes. At the center of it, all the human ship drifted calm, untouched, its glow fading slowly, until it looked once again like an ordinary vessel, small, fragile, unimportant. But the silence it carried now was heavier than before, the silence of extinction. The pilot inside sat still, his face calm, his eyes steady, as if none of this destruction had touched him. He did not smile, he did not mourn, he simply watched the debris of thousands who had mocked him, now nothing more than dust. Then he reached for the console, and with a single motion his ship folded into hyperspace, vanishing from the battlefield, leaving behind only ruin. Yet the story did not end there. Across the galaxy fragments of signals remained. The alien fleet had sent recordings before their end, warnings, cries of disbelief and terror. Those signals traveled far, and other empires listened. At first they laughed, thinking it another story told to frighten them, but then the signals showed the truth, the vision of a single human ship standing against countless alien vessels, and destroying them with silence and light. Fear spread through the stars. The name of humanity, once thought weak, once dismissed as fragile, became a shadow in every council room. No one knew if the lone pilot was a soldier, a commander, or something more. Some whispered he was a guardian, a hidden weapon kept by humans to unleash only when mocked beyond forgiveness. Others believed he was not human at all, but a machine built by humanity to protect their kind. Whatever the truth was, no one dared to test it again. Across the ruins of the fallen empire, scavengers crept through wreckage searching for survivors, but they found none, only twisted metal and faint echoes of strange energy that still hummed in the bones of broken ships. Some claimed they saw messages burned into the wreckage, words left behind like scars on steel, Humanity remembers, humanity endures. The word spread like fire across the galaxy, repeated in whispers among traitors and spies. Even the strongest warlords felt unease when they heard them. What had once been prey had shown itself as predator. What had once been mocked now carried fear in its silence. And somewhere out in the endless dark, the lone human pilot traveled, his course unknown, his mission unfinished. His eyes still calm and steady, as though waiting for the next enemy to appear. The galaxy could not know when or where he would return, but they knew one truth that could never be ignored. Never again would anyone laugh at the sight of a human ship. Never again would silence be mistaken for weakness, because silence now carried the memory of extinction, and the promise that if provoked it would return. The human vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind mystery, but his legacy was carved into the stars. Forever.